morning and welcome back, my friends, my fellow patriots. This is the Conservative Cat Show. This is the show brave enough to say the quiet parts out loud. I appreciate you being here. We've got so much news to tackle, and I'm just going to jump right in if that's okay by you. I mean, it's Friday Eve. Lots of things have been going on. An Illinois Democrat, can you guess which one? Throw it in the comment section. He is declaring war on rural drivers. And, he's essentially saying that carjackings happen everywhere. And we shouldn't use that in the assessment or in the risk assessment, or car insurers shouldn't use that in their risk assessment. Now, believe me, I don't think car insurance companies are little sweet angels either. But we definitely don't want socialized car insurance or socialized insurance. And that's where we're headed, government insurance. So we're going to be talking about that, but I also want to go to Bloomington, Illinois today. Cops are getting paid a grant from the state to take guns from law-abiding citizens. Now, I definitely think they dropped the ball when it came to this one homicide-suicide. It was a murder-suicide. And this guy had his FOID card revoked, but still had guns, and there wasn't an attempt to go take the guns away from him. And I get that, but I mean, I don't like the law at all. Like FOID, we should void the FOID 100%. What needs to happen is we need to get rid of those laws, and we need to lock up the people who should be locked up. Why wasn't he in jail? And why was he able to commit the murder-suicide? Why didn't he get the help that he needed? And I think far too often we look at things like FOID revocation as a solution to the crime. And really, the solution to the crime is quite simple. Lock them up, throw away the key. If they are a danger to themselves and others, they should not be out and about in society. All right, I do also want to talk about Nancy Pelosi. She got flustered with CNN because they asked her questions about insider trading. She was really upset that they asked her this question. She was like, I was under the impression that I was going to be here to talk about the 60th anniversary of Medicaid or whatever. Yeah, okay. You were expecting snowballs there, Nancy, and when you didn't get them, you got, peeved off. We are also going to be talking about Sydney Sweeney because this is fascinating. I think it was The Atlantic or some left-wing media outlet. They did a write-up on Sydney Sweeney and how she threw a MAGA party for her mother's birthday, like a 60-year-old birthday, 60th birthday party, and that she threw a MAGA party, which she really didn't. Okay, people just happened to be wearing parody hats, parody MAGA hats that said "Make 60 Great Again," which was really funny. And somebody at the party, an attendee, had like a thin blue line shirt, which wasn't even all that like blatant. You know what I mean? Like people wear thin blue line shirts all the time. It's thin blue line is really to be worn. Or to be flown when an officer loses his life in the line of duty. And Sydney Sweeney, she threw a party for her mom, and she posted some pictures on Instagram. And the left is now throwing that up. That was from 2022. They're now throwing that up and saying that Sydney Sweeney is MAGA, 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 which they have no evidence of that, no evidence that she voted for Donald Trump. But of course, it's the left, and they love to jump to conclusions. Now, I am going to start with this Illinois Democrat. Throw it in the comments section. Who do you think it is who is declaring war on rural drivers? Let's talk about him. Illinois Secretary of State Alexei Janulius. He's a guy who apparently wants to save us from the horrors that is math, logic, and actuarial tables. Okay, he wants to save us from all of that. Yes, folks, he launched this shiny new initiative, and it's been a thing for a couple of years now where it's like this driving change. It's a new initiative called Driving Change, but he's been screaming from the rooftops about this particular issue with car insurers using things like credit scores, zip codes to assess risk and then calculate your premium, okay? But nothing screams change, driving change. Nothing screams change like pretending Chicago and Effingham, have the same crime rates. They don't. Clay County, even McLean County, which, the crime rate isn't great in some of these rural areas, but definitely not the same as Chicago. Like, we can't pretend Like, that's a thing, okay? Rural Illinois is definitely safer, a lot less crime than what goes on in Chicago, okay? Alexi Danulius is on a mission, however. He wants to not clean up the voter rolls like we should be doing. He doesn't want to fix the DMV wait times. It was so funny. My brother, who was on the phone with me the other day, he was saying that he apparently now you have to make, and this isn't the case at my driver's, at my DMV. It's just not the case. I go and then I walk in and then I walk out. It's a rural, it's like very rural county that I live in. But apparently now you have to create or go online and book an appointment. So my brother was, bitching about the DMV, like we all do. And the appointment he set, like he booked it on his phone, and then he shows up for the appointment, and then they turn him away because they said, actually, we can't see you today. We're just a little bit too slammed. We're too busy, despite him actually booking the appointment. So it's just a nightmare. He's not focused on the DMV wait times or the cleaning up the voter rolls with the automatic voter registration. I'm sure that you have some people who probably either don't live in Illinois anymore on the voter rolls, or illegal immigrants possibly on the voter rolls. We should be focused on cleaning that up, especially considering we have that automatic voter registration, which is just gay. Can I say that? I don't know. People get upset with me. I think that automatic voter registration is just gay, and here's why. You have the right to not vote as much as you have the right to vote. Why would I have to jump through all kinds of hoops to unregister myself? Because that's what the automatic voter registration, you have to fill out a postcard, send it in to get yourself off the voter roll or to get yourself unregistered. Why would I jump through all kinds of hopes to unregister myself? Right? I would just register to vote if I really wanted to. It's just so annoying. Anyway, so he's tackling the terrifying injustice, Alexi Danulius, of insurance companies using, wait for it, zip codes. How could they to set car insurance premiums? I know. I can hear you right now. I hear you loud and clear. You're saying, Kat, are we really going to do a full show on insurance rates? Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And I'll tell you why. Because it affects a lot of people, and your insurance premiums are already really, really high, if not some of the highest in the nation. Illinois has some of the highest car insurance, home insurance premiums. We have some pretty high premiums here in the state of Illinois, and they're only going to get higher if Alexi Danulius and Democrats get their way. But this is all about how the left is weaponizing victimhood, weaponizing identity politics to destroy the free market, to destroy and punish responsibility. And that is why I'm doing the story today. I was talking with somebody yesterday. They told me that their energy bill, ours, did double as well. And did your energy bill double, by the way? Do you have ComEd, Amberin? Throw it in the comments section. Is it double? Is it double? Because I heard that it was just going to be like I forget, I think it was like a 20-something% increase. And I did not expect it to double. But most everybody is telling me that their energy bill doubled. And we have the Climate Equitable Jobs Act to thank for that. So let's buckle in for the next 40-ish or so minutes, the 6 o'clock hour. We are going to be unpacking this initiative, the Driving Change Initiative, and how really this is an attack on rural Illinois. And we are kind of taking a step towards a soft socialist dystopia. Okay, so our founders have warned about this. A socialized insurance, socialized government controlled everything is not good. Our founders warned about this kind of thing, and we are taking a step in that direction towards government insurance. Okay, so here's the headline. Danulius wants to ban insurance companies from using your age, your credit score, and your zip code when setting auto insurance rates. So let me say that again. They want to pretend that a 50-year-old with good credit in Logan County, Illinois, is just as risky to insure as a 22-year-old with bad credit in a gang-riddled Chicago neighborhood. Okay. That's just not true. Actuarial science proves that the guy who is 50 years old, has a great credit score, and lives in a rural county is probably less of a risk than the 22-year-old in Chicago with a bad credit score. Okay, so I don't know what planet this is. Folks, here in real America, insurance is based on risk. Let's take a listen. Here we go.
Tell you unequivocally that rural communities, suburbs, downstate, Rockford are all dealing with carjacking, broken windows, cars being broken into.
You could have like a California where those insurance companies just say, we're done with Illinois, and they leave the state.
We've already seen an outpouring of people reach out. We're going to do these town halls. We're going to treat this like a political campaign. We're going to get as much information as possible. We're going to hear directly from the people.
Yeah, I think credit score is a good indicator of whether or not you're going to be responsible enough to pay your bills.
Okay. I wanted to share that with you. That was Center Square's clip. It took clips from Alexi Janulius, and that was State Senator Terry Bryant, whom you heard. Yes, in America, we base things off of risk when it comes to insurance. We always have. We always should. We should. Risk comes from many factors: where you live, how you drive, and how responsible you are with your money. But to Democrats, reality is oppression. Let me say that again. To Democrats, reality, logic, math, all of that is oppression. Statistics are offensive, and they believe equality must be enforced with a crowbar, even if it means bankrupting the system, destroying the system completely, and replacing it with socialized insurance. Okay. So State Senator Terry Bryant, who you heard, God bless her for standing up. She said credit score is a good indicator of whether or not you're going to be responsible enough to pay your bills. Yeah, exactly. But in Democrat la la land, that's like hate speech to them. How dare you use somebody's credit score to calculate their insurance premium? Because to them, fairness is punishing the responsible and rewarding the reckless. That is their idea of fair. Now, let's really dig into the zip code stuff, okay? Because according to Alexi, everywhere is the same. Janulius, he says that it's unfair that folks in crime-ridden cities pay more for car insurance. He says that that's unfair. He claims that rural Illinois is just as dangerous. He listed off a bunch. I'm not saying that Rockford doesn't have their problems with carjacking. I'm not saying that they don't have a problem with vandalism or anything like that. What I am saying is that it is much worse in the Chicagoland area than, say, Springfield, Illinois, Peoria, even Illinois, Bloomington, Illinois. It is much different in Chicagoland than it is in those areas. Decatur, okay, the carjackings are not near what Chicago is at. Okay, it's just that is a fact, a statistical fact. So it's kind of like saying we should all pay the same flood insurance. If you have one house in a swamp, like in a swampy area, and the other is up on a hill and is in the driest location in the United States, right? It's kind of like forcing somebody to pay more for flood insurance when they've never had a flood. They're up on a hill, and they would never see rain, right? I mean, this is what we're talking about. So, Alexi, sweetheart, dear, rural Illinois is not dodging bullets on their way to the grocery store, okay, like some areas in the Chicagoland area, okay? We're dodging deer, not drug cartels. Now, I'm not saying that there's not a problem with drugs or carjacking or things in rural Illinois, but I will be honest with you. I definitely would not lock my car in a Walmart or like in a Walmart parking lot close to the Chicagoland area. I would definitely lock my car if I was in a Walmart up north. Okay. Now, if I'm in Lincoln, Illinois, and I've got my car and I'm running into Walmart real quick, there have been times where, oh, I forgot to lock my car. That would never happen if I was in the Chicagoland area. I promise you. And my car would still be there. Okay. In the Chicagoland area, sometimes you lock your car and it's still, I was actually chatting with somebody, the construction worker type guy in Chicago, and they've got trucks, vans that they keep their tools in. And at this point they said, hey, let's not put these padlocks on the back of our vans anymore because our tools keep getting stolen and they keep damaging the vans by sledgehammering the padlock off. They're going to steal the tools anyway. We might as well just keep the padlock off and keep the van from getting damaged, because it's quite annoying to have to file claims all of the time when our vans get damaged with the sledgehammers because they're stealing our tools. So in this press conference, you've got Alexi Janulius, and he actually suggested that rural communities deal with as much or the same. He indicated that we deal with the same level, rural communities, of vehicle crime as, say, South Side Chicago, which is kind of funny because considering this driving change town hall or whatever, wherever he was at, you guessed it, he wasn't in a rural county, okay? He wasn't in a rural location. He was in the Chicagoland area. So I guess, we're too dangerous, maybe. Maybe the rural communities are too dangerous to go there and to, justify slapping higher rates on these folks. Or we're not important enough to listen to, because it seems like Alexi Janulius, Governor J.B. Pritzker, they always tend to stay kind of in the Chicagoland area and do their press conferences up there. They never really want to go downstate and do press conferences and answer and justify their justify their policies. So this is the same Democrat playbook. Use the suffering of the urban areas, which was really created by their own failed policies. The crime in Chicago, that's created by failed Democrat policies, decades upon decades of failed Democrat policies. They're going to use the suffering of these areas to justify overreach, and then they're going to cause pain on rural voters. That is what they're going to do. And they do it all the time. This is why 30 counties in Illinois, 30 plus counties in Illinois are seceding. They have already voted to secede from the state. Okay, so we're tired of being treated like serfs and peasants by the politicians who can tell corn from quinoa. Okay, so the real issue here with the credit scores, I want to talk about that. We've already talked about the zip codes. Like I said, I'm not saying that those areas, rural communities, or Decatur, Springfield, Peoria, even some of these more populated areas, not saying that they don't struggle with carjackings, because they do, but not nearly to the extent of a Chicago, okay, or the south side of Chicago, okay. So credit scores. They want to ban insurance companies from using credit scores. Why? Because credit scores, like grades, tests, and test scores or job history, this is based off of your personal behavior, and the left hates that. They hate responsibility. It's easier to claim discrimination than to preach discipline. They scream credit scores are racist, zip codes are classist, because they definitely don't want to start pitching the message that, hey, you should probably have a little bit of self-control, biblical stewardship, delayed gratification. You don't need instant gratification. They don't want to start preaching that, especially in the public schools, to the generation who's raised on TikToks and government checks. Okay. They don't want to start preaching that, because they're going to have to start preaching that. And we should be preaching that to our children. It's never too early to talk to your kids about finance and about credit. The Bible talks about the borrower is slave to the lender. We should be teaching our children that taking out a credit card doesn't mean that you're a fancy adult. It means that you are a slave to the lender. You are a slave to this credit card company. And we should be teaching our children that, but God forbid we do that in public school. Okay, yeah, that's the last thing the left wants to do in public school. Now, I'm not saying insurance companies are angels, okay? I have to pay an insurance bill just like you, and I hate them just as much, okay? It's always a nightmare to deal with these insurance companies, but the reason why it's a nightmare, think about all the industries you want to avoid. They're all either government subsidized or highly regulated by the government. Insurance companies, airlines, car dealerships, hospitals, okay, the healthcare system. all of these types of industries, they've got their grubby little fingers in them, the government. Okay. And anytime the government's involved, it's always a freaking headache. So I'm not saying that insurance companies are angels. I want to make that very clear. But if someone gets a DUI and never pays their bills on time, never pays their credit card bills, why should I have to pay more? Why should you have to pay more just so they can feel better about themselves? And, you know, the Democrats can feel better about themselves and say that they're the compassionate ones. No, what is going on is we're subsidizing irresponsibility. And what happens when these insurers can't use basic risk assessment or basic risk factors that we've used for the beginning of time, since really the beginning of insurance companies, they've used these types of factors like credit score or where you live, okay? When they can't use those basic risk factors, what is going to happen? They are going to rise for everyone across the board. And that is not speculation. That is fact. We've seen it play out. California has tried this and has done it, and companies have fled. Look at State Farm. Look at the wildfire situation, okay? Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Actually, they left California. So California has done this. The state of California, the government, they've done things like this, regulation of these insurance companies and their risk factors, and trying to, put the thumb on these companies. And the companies have just fled the state. So Senator Bryan, she nailed it. She says, quote, in Center Square, we could end up like California, where insurance companies say, we're done with Illinois. And then they just wind up leaving the state. When the companies pull out, guess who's left holding the bag? You, the rural single mom, the farmer with 2 trucks, the small town mechanic. Okay. Welcome to Illinois socialism, equal misery for all. That's where we're headed. And what's the real motive behind this? It is control, and it is votes. Control and votes. Write that down if you've got a green crayon handy. Okay. Here's the truth. They don't want you to know this, but this is not about fairness. It's about control. By capping the rates, banning certain criteria when setting those rates, handcuffing these companies, essentially, the state gains more leverage in the private market. Okay, it's another step towards socialized insurance, just like they want socialized medicine, just like they want socialized energy and socialized housing. They want to socialize the car dealership or the car industry. They want to socialize that clearly, because they gave you all kinds of tax credits to go buy an electric vehicle. They want socialized everything. This is a step towards socialized insurance. And they are creating a dependent class, one government subsidized policy at a time, one government regulation at a time. They are creating a dependent class. And let's not ignore the political math here, okay? Urban voters benefit. Rural voters pay. That, my friends, is called vote engineering. Somebody throw that in the comments section. Vote engineering in its purest form. And this is what Illinois Democrats have gotten so good at. It's about pleasing these city Democrat strongholds, these big city Democrat strongholds, before the next election. Okay, it's about saying, hey, look what we did for you. We punished the zip codes full of those dirty Republicans, and we gave you a discount. They do this stuff all of the time. It's unjust. It's evil. It's very evil. And from a Christian worldview, and I want to bring this in to our Christian segment here, the Bible doesn't preach equal outcomes. It preaches just weights and measures. Okay, so Proverbs 11. So the Bible doesn't preach equity. Here's what Proverbs 11 verse 1 says. A false balance is an abomination to the Lord. What is equity? It is a false balance. When you reward the irresponsible and you punish the responsible, that is a false balance. That is what's called equity. And the Bible goes as far to say, Proverbs, that is an abomination to the Lord. So equity is not a Christian. And I say it all the time. The Democrats are just anti-Christians. That is it. They take everything out of the Bible and they twist it and they do the exact opposite. So A false balance, equity, is an abomination to the Lord. So this plan by Alexi Janulius is a false balance. That's what it is. It pretends that unequal risks are the same. They are not equal. Okay, these are unequal risk. I am far less at risk in my little county of Logan County than, say, Cook County. Okay, when it comes to having my car stolen, it is a much lower risk for me. That's why I live here. Okay, so it ignores wisdom. This driving initiative, this driving change initiative ignores wisdom. It trashes discernment. It punishes good stewardship and blesses reckless living. It's not loving your neighbor. It's hurting other people who you want to raise rates on for the irresponsible. So if you want lower premiums, here's my advice. One, drive better. You should always strive to drive with excellence, right? Pay your bills. Pay your credit card bills. Don't be a slave to the lender, okay? And live in a safe neighborhood. Get the hell out of these big cities. I've told you since the beginning of time, right? Of the creation of this show. Get out of big cities. There's no reason to live in these big cities where your risk is higher. Just get into a safe neighborhood. Drive 30 minutes and go find a safer neighborhood to live in. Okay, this is called liberty. It's not oppression. You can make good choices. Choose to live rural. Choose to pay your bills on time. And in the end, this is about who controls the narrative and whether truth still matters in this state run by bureaucrats. And these bureaucrats think that crime data, these bureaucrats think that credit scores, that this is all hate speech and that those factors, those risk factors, and calculating risk on those factors is like oppressive in some kind of way. So this is about the truth and whether it still matters. And you need to call your legislators. You need to tell them to don't back bills that are a part of Alexi Janulis's driving change initiative or this handcuffing car insurance companies. I don't like the car insurance companies either, but I definitely don't want socialized car insurance. All right, got to take a quick break. But we are going to be talking about this story. It's pretty jaw-dropping. But Bloomington Police Department, they just got over a $20,000 grant from the state of Illinois, not to fight drug cartels, no, but to seize guns from residents whose FOID cards have been revoked. Now, in some cases, I mean, this is so hard because I am so anti-FOID card. It's not even funny. I think that we should void the FOID. It's unconstitutional. It's the anti-Second Amendment. Now, some people should, under the law, I guess, if we're going to do FOID cards, should have their FOID cards revoked. There was a murder-suicide that happened in Bloomington not that long ago, sort of recent, and this guy had his FOID revoked, and there were no attempts to revoke his FOID card or to police this law that's on the books where your FOID card is revoked. There is a process set up to where you have to go confiscate guns if somebody's FOID card is revoked. Turns out that process fails time and time again. Why? Probably because it's an unconstitutional law and we should probably just get rid of the FOID and FOID revocation altogether. Okay. But here's what they're doing now. They're giving grants to the Bloomington police to go out there and to seize guns. Not that they're busy enough, like, fighting drug cartels, human trafficking, carjackings, doing their actual damn jobs. But now they've got to be Second Amendment police. So you're not dreaming. This is really happening. If you think that this is about keeping guns out of the wrong hands, think again. This is about government deciding who deserves rights and who doesn't. And then enforcing it with boots at your door. Okay, who deserves rights and who doesn't? And then we're going to enforce that with boots on the ground, boots at the door. So the next half hour or so, I'm going to take a quick break. The next half hour or so, we are going to be talking about these FOID cards. the firearm owner's identification card. Okay. We're going to be talking about that and the seizures that they're planning to do, the Bloomington police, with this grant, the $20,000 grant. I will be right back. Go ahead and smash that like button. I like this comment from Bob. You'll own nothing and you'll like it. That is exactly what they want. They want socialism. It's not hard to find cheap housing in good rural areas. Yeah, exactly. I highly recommend you go out to a rural area. Get out of the big cities. I've said that for years now. There's no reason for you to be at risk. The crazier and crazier the Democrats get, you are going to be further and further at risk in these big cities. I just say move. Get out of there. Lisa, good morning. Appreciate you being here. All right. I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to be right back. Hey, this is Conservative Cat Clips, and this is the place where we remind you that your children come from God and they don't come from the Department of Education. The government wants to raise your kids. They want to feed them breakfast. They want to tell them about gender ideology and gender identity as young as kindergarten. They want to start them out really early. They want to tell your kids how many pronouns they should have, and they want your kids to learn all the pronouns by the age of 3rd grade. Okay. Meanwhile, they can't keep bathrooms clean in their schools. They can't keep their test scores up, reading, writing, and arithmetic. They can't keep those scores above sea level. The truth here is that bureaucrats don't love their kids. They don't know their quirks, their fears, their hearts, and they certainly don't care what the Bible says about fearing or about raising them in fearing the Lord. Okay, so in Psalm 127, verse 3, children are a heritage from the Lord, not a project for the state, not a cultural science experiment. They are your responsibility, your blessing, and your mission. Okay, but what happens if you step in and they say, I'll take it from here? Okay, and what happens when you step in and say, hey, I'm actually going to take responsibility and I'm going to participate in raising my child? You show up to the school board meetings, you ask about the curriculum, you object to Drag Queen Story Hour and Drag Queen Library Story Hour and all of these pornographic books in the libraries. What happens when you say, I'm going to take it from here, I'm going to start participating in my mission and my responsibility in raising up my child? You are deemed a domestic terrorist. Okay, if you start showing up and if you actually start taking responsibility over raising your child, you are dangerous to democracy. They'll say that. And they'll say that all because you just started loving your kid enough to be involved. So we've normalized this idea that parents should just hand over their kids for 8 hours a day and play catch up over a microwave dinner and try to catch up on who your kid actually is. Your kids are strangers. That's not parenting, that's outsourcing. So the product here is a generation that is anxious, that is confused, and they are spiritually hollow. What if we flipped the script? Really, what if we turned off the screens, cracked open a Bible, and actually parented the way Deuteronomy 6 tells us to parent, at home and all of the time? And I think that our future of the country actually depends on this. And I hope that we start parenting like our future and like the future of the country depends on it, because it does. So don't be intimidated. God gave you those kids for a reason. Raise them up in truth, teach them real values, and never hand over this sacred duty to the folks who say remote learning is the way to go, or gender identity, you can identify as whatever the hell you want. Don't hand over that sacred duty of parenting and raising your children to people who are just wacky weirdos. You can raise your children, and you are required to raise your children because they are a gift from God, and He's bestowed a sacred duty on you as a parent. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. Hey, go ahead, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. Happy birthday, Lisa. I am so glad that you're joining me here this morning. Bob, you're exactly right. The FOID was adjudicated unconstitutional. Wasn't FOID deemed unconstitutional by a lower court? Yes. The Seventh Circuit refuses to admit the unconstitutionality. I believe it's before the Supreme Court of the United States, but they're dragging their feet on this. Yeah, it's been tied up in the courts for years. Everybody's dragging their feet on whether the FOID card is unconstitutional. I believe it's unconstitutional, and that brings me to today's story. Now, this happened in March of this year. Yeah, March of this year, there was a triple homicide suicide in Bloomington. And shortly after that, gun rights advocates came out and said, hey, the firearm owner's identification card revocation process, so where they revoke your FOID card, the process it doesn't work. The process is to actually seize the guns after that FOID is revoked. Never happened. Okay. And the Bloomington Police Department, they released in a news release back in March or February, it was in the spring, said the firearm used in this triple homicide suicide was recovered at the scene under the body of Christopher Simmons. The firearm was legally purchased by Simmons in 2021. In 2022, Simmons' FOID card was revoked. Okay, and he was prohibited from illegally possessing firearms. Guns Save Life, Executive Director John Bach at the time said that Simmons shouldn't have had guns. Yeah, of course. Under the law, he shouldn't have had guns because his FOID card was revoked. In this case, a couple of officers, they could have easily knocked on the door and asked for his gun. After his FOID card was revoked, they might have gotten the gun, but they didn't do that. And the state police didn't do that. Okay, the Illinois State Police informed local law enforcement that Simmons had failed to submit a firearm disposition form. Notification of Simmons' revocation was sent to a law enforcement portal, which local law enforcement agencies can use for enforcement purposes. So ISP essentially said, like, yeah, Bloomington should have checked the portal, and they should have, carried out the enforcement process of the FOID revocation. So they did not seize the gun. Confiscation seizures, assuming they did not, clearly because he still had the gun, right? Christopher Simmons. It's just like so ridiculous that we have FOID revocation in these processes to begin with. They don't work, clearly, but anytime there's a problem, guess what happens? Money is thrown at that problem, and it's not going to get any better, I promise you, because of this $20,000 grant that was thrown at the Bloomington Police Department to fight FOIDs or to revoke or seize guns from revoked FOID cards. Okay, I don't think anything is going to change with the $20,000 grant. Okay, there are still going to be bad guys out there, because I promise you that this guy, Christopher Simmons, even had he had his gun confiscated from the Bloomington police and they were actually doing their jobs, under the law, under current Illinois law, and they had actually done their jobs, the Illinois State Police, it's kind of, I thought it was under the Illinois State Police jurisdiction to go enforce this kind of stuff, which would make sense, because why would we require our local law enforcement to go be the gun police? Okay, they've already got enough going on. But if people had done their jobs in the first place, I don't know if I could say that this would have never happened. Okay, because Christopher Simmons, let's be real, you're going to commit a triple homicide suicide, you're probably going to do it anyway. It doesn't matter how many guns they come and take from you, you're probably going to wind up finding a gun to do it anyway, because you're just that bad of a guy, right? Or you're a criminal. Okay, criminals don't stop and say, hey, they actually confiscated my guns and my FOID card's revoked, I probably shouldn't go out there and get another gun. Okay, they're going to find a way. So the government, this isn't about, keeping the guns out of the wrong hands, this $20,000 grant. This is about the government deciding who's right, who deserves rights and who doesn't. And then they're going to put boots on the ground to enforce it at your door. So settle in, folks, because this is going to be, about 30-minute segment. So what's really going on with these FOID seizures? We're going to be talking about that. The slippery slope of compliance enforcement, because this is what I think is going on with the $20,000 grant. There's some compliance enforcement going on. This is dangerous for due process rights. The FOID seizures, or the FOID revocation seizures. And I'm going to tell you about what this means for you, the law-abiding citizen who believes rights are given from God, not the government. Okay, they're not government-granted rights; they are God-granted rights. Okay, so let's start with the basic. In Illinois, we've got this neat little thing. If you're just tuning in, it's called the FOID card. This is the Firearm Owner Identification Card. Basically, it's a permission slip from the state saying and telling you you're allowed to exercise your Second Amendment rights. So let's pause right there. Somebody already brought it up. It's tied up in the courts. That's unconstitutional. The government, which can't even balance their own budget, okay, and they can't pave a road, they can't keep potholes off of I-55. They think that they have the ultimate wisdom and moral authority on who gets to own a firearm. They get to decide who owns a firearm and who doesn't. Okay, so when they revoke that card, this is how it goes and it plays out in Illinois. When they revoke that card, sometimes for good reason. Christopher Simmons, he had a record. I think that is what led ultimately to his revocation. I haven't been able to figure that out. He was released on a conditional discharge in September of 2023 for a misdemeanor gun charge. And probation officers, unlike law enforcement, they don't need a court order to go search and seize firearms. So I don't know. There's a lot of missing plates here. People were kept dropping plates because what about the probation officer? Okay, he was on 18 months. Did they seize the guns? I mean, how did this guy wind up having guns? Everything in Illinois law tells me that this guy shouldn't have had guns. And, we've crafted the law in such a way to where this kind of stuff shouldn't happen. But it does. Why? Because the laws are pointless and stupid. And they shouldn't exist in the first place. And so what happens when that FOID card is revoked? Sometimes for good reason. In this case, the guy who did the triple homicide suicide, crazy. In this case, justified probably. He was a criminal. I think he had some DUI type charges as well. Sometimes for good reason. Sometimes on flimsy evidence. So in some cases, you have good reason to revoke that FOID card. In other reasons, you have flimsy evidence or flimsy reasons like, you forgot to fill out your paperwork or you forgot to renew your FOID card. Sometimes they'll revoke your FOID card if you don't renew it, okay? Or if you don't fill out paperwork or cross all your T's or dot your I's, okay? And if that's the case, then your FOID card is going to get revoked, or that's totally flimsy and totally stupid, for your FOID card to be revoked for those bureaucratic reasons, okay? So the Bloomington PD, they say that it's a huge project and they're going to seize weapons from revoked card holders. They say it is a huge project to do this, to go out and seize weapons, and that it's difficult to do. And that it's dangerous and time consuming and it's costly, of course. So what's their solution? The state's going to throw a state grant at them. They're not going to hire any new officers from what I understand. So essentially what they're going to do is these cops are going to use this state grant to go knock on doors, overtime essentially. So I'd imagine if they're not hiring new officers to do this kind of thing, they're going to have to pay their officers overtime, use the $20,000 to do this, and go knock on doors and take firearms. But wait, you probably are thinking, isn't that the Illinois State Police's job? And like I said, it's really fuzzy because the Illinois State Police kind of at the time of this triple homicide suicide, they kind of absolved themselves of any wrongdoing. But statute kind of makes it clear that it is sort of like the Illinois State Police's job to go out and do this kind of stuff. It's the Illinois State Police Violent Crime Intelligence Task Force. That is something that is the task force that I think is supposed to actually go out and do the confiscations. But thanks to this agreement with the Illinois State Police and the Bloomington Police, they are now a part, the Bloomington squad is now a part of this the state gun seizure squad. Okay, so you would think that it would be all up to the Illinois State Police, the ones who go out and actually do the seizures. But they've through this like partnership, I guess they've kind of like hired on or like deputized the Bloomington cops to be a part of the state's gun seizure squad. So congratulations, Bloomington. You've been deputized, your local force, to be the anti-gun enforcement wing of Pritzker's regime. Essentially with this $20,000 grant. That's the way I see it, right? So why Bloomington? You're probably thinking, okay, so this is, we're focusing on Bloomington. 300 people, this is a shocking statistic I found. 300 people a year in the city of Bloomington have their FOID cards revoked. That was kind of a shocking statistics. Now, the grant of more than $20,000 was awarded based on violent crime statistics. And let's be clear, FOID revocations, I really think it has something to do with this triple homicide suicide thing. Let's be clear, the FOID revocations, it doesn't always equal violent people. So those 300 people a year, you could have missed a deadline on your renewals. There could have been paperwork errors, temporary issues like restraining orders, by the way, that may or may not be justified. Because an order of protection here in the state of Illinois, this is fairly new, thanks to new state law, police are now required to go proactively seize firearms for anyone who is under an order of protection. That's right. No trial, no conviction. You just have an order of protection against you. And it could be justified. It could not be. This is a piece of paper. There's no conviction, and they go and they seize your guns if you have an order of protection against you. Okay, and look, I take domestic violence very, very seriously. I think everybody does. But the Constitution doesn't get suspended because someone files an accusation or someone has an order of protection against someone. There's no conviction there. And I'm not even really of the belief that we should be taking guns away from felons. It's unconstitutional. Second Amendment right shall not be infringed. And that might be controversial to some, but I am a Second Amendment absolutist because shall not be infringed is pretty clear to me. But the Constitution, like I said, shouldn't get suspended just because somebody files an accusation or has this paperwork, the order of protection paperwork. So about 300 people a year in the city of Bloomington have their FOID cards revoked. So they're going to have to go knock on the doors. This is quite the task that is before the city of Bloomington police officers. They're going to have to go knock on the doors of like 300 people and go seize their guns. And they got like this $20,000 grant, which isn't even all that much to go do that. And they're not going to be hiring new officers with that, obviously. So they're going to be paying officers overtime to pretty much be the anti-gun enforcement wing of the Illinois State Police, which I thought was originally supposed to be their job. Like, obviously, so many people dropped the ball with the Christopher Simmons story. And let's not forget, it's not just Bloomington. Robert Crimo III, you guys remember him. He pleaded guilty to the 2022 Highland Park shooting where he killed 7 people and injured dozens. You guys remember this. The ISP is now currently facing civil challenges in the Illinois Court of Claims over issuing Crimo a FOID card. Okay. So plaintiffs argue that the local police report of Crimo being a clear and present danger should have been enough to block his FOID card. So not only are they revoking people's FOID cards and then not following through with the revocation process, which would mean the seizure of the guns, not only are they not doing that, but they're also issuing FOID cards to people who are deemed by local police clear and present danger, like Robert Crimo was. Okay. So the whole process, the whole FOID card process just sucks in general. So like I said, where was I? This is tragic what happened, okay, with this murder-suicide case. But I really think that the murder-suicide case, they're using those cases to justify the increased FOID enforcement. It shouldn't shock us, right, that they're doing this now. There were 2 actually horrific murder-suicide cases in Bloomington recently, and these 2 tragedies, both the perps had FOID cards revoked. Okay, and that of course has sparked a lot of question marks about the FOID revocation process and the enforcement of that process, and how they've not really done their jobs, either at a local level or in the Illinois State Police level. And what really bothers me about this is that it's kind of been made a local police problem. Really, what should have happened was that the Illinois State Police, they had egg on their face after both of these situations, and they should be the enforcers of this, because we need our local police to do the local police things, right? The carjackings, responding to the murder-suicides. We need them to actually do their jobs and not be this anti-gun police, okay? Leave that up to the Pritzker State Police. If the Pritzker's regime, the branch, the anti-gun branch of Pritzker's regime, I would say the state police. So let me be clear, these cases are tragic, the murder-suicides. I'd love to see those people not have guns in their hands, but the point is even if their guns were confiscated by either Illinois State Police or the local law enforcement, say, the BPD, that wouldn't have stopped them, I don't think, from committing murder-suicide. Okay, they would have found a gun somewhere, and they would have done it anyway, despite them having their FOID cards revoked, and despite them not having their guns confiscated. Okay, so these are relatively rare, extreme incidents in Bloomington, and they're using these relatively rare and extreme incidents to do these sweeping gun seizures. Okay, and this is the oldest trick in the authoritarian book. They use the same logic to justify lockdowns and COVID mask mandates, okay? The Patriot Act, okay? One terrible thing happens, and then suddenly everybody's liberty is on the chopping block. So let me ask you the obvious. Were these killers ever going to be stopped by having their FOID cards revoked? Clearly they weren't stopped because their FOID cards were revoked. They still had guns in their possession. But I'll even take it a step further. I don't think that these criminals would have been stopped had their guns been confiscated by the local police or by the state police. A card isn't going to stop evil. Okay, gun confiscation isn't going to stop evil. Moral clarity, strong families, swift justice, and armed citizens, that is real public safety. Unfortunately, I think in both of these incidents, these people, I know Christopher Simmons had that record. Robert Cremo, local police prior to that incident, deemed him a clear and present danger. Okay, so Robert Cremo should have had help. He was deemed a clear and present danger by police prior to the shooting. A lot of these folks, they need to be locked up and the key thrown away. We need to bring back insane asylums. So, like I said, strong families, swift justice, clear justice, like, hey, you committed crimes, we're going to lock you up, throw away the key, or we're going to lock you up in an insane asylum if you are a danger to yourself and others. And we're going to keep our citizens armed, and that is what creates real public safety, not this whole gun confiscation thing or the FOID revocation. None of this is ever going to work. Instead of asking why these criminals weren't behind bars, that Illinois is going to be coming after you and doing these gun confiscation things. If you miss a deadline for renewing your FOID card, okay, they're going to be coming after you. And what we really should be doing is just asking this question, hey, are we keeping our criminals behind bars? Are the people who are clear and present dangers, are we keeping them off of the streets and in asylums or mental institutions? The law-abiding father, is going to be impacted by this likely if he misses a FOID date or a FOID deadline to renew his FOID. The responsible veteran, the woman who bought a pistol for self-defense and happened to forget to renew. Okay, she's going to be affected by this. The guy who forgot to renew his void card, during a flood of DMV shutdowns or during a hiatus with the Illinois State Police or bureaucratic BS, that you go through to renew the thing in general. Those people are going to be affected by this. The criminals, they're still going to get the guns, even if you wind up performing like a gun confiscation or seizing guns from the criminals who have their FOID cards revoked for good reason. They're still going to probably get their hands on the guns. Why? Because they're criminals. And evil doesn't stop when there's roadblocks like gun confiscation or FOID cards. So what does the Bible say? I want to make sure we get to the Christian worldview here. Deuteronomy 19 says, a matter must be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. So in Scripture, justice is proportional, it's personal, and it's honest. It requires truth, it requires witnesses, due process, and repentance. Okay, so under Illinois law, a single judge can now result like a single judge, a single claim, an order of protection, no conviction, that can result in a forced weapon seizure. Okay, without any kind of trial, without any kind of hearing, or without any kind of warning. So, like, for example, you miss a deadline to renew your FOID. Okay. There is a, single judge. I don't even know if they need to go before a judge. Usually that's the process. They go before the judge to get the order for gun confiscation. But, I mean, what the hell? You didn't even get your day in court, and they can issue this order to go seize your weapons, and you didn't even get to tell the judge in person that, hey, I just forgot a deadline. Like, I'm a single mom, right? And I bought this pistol for self-defense, and I just forgot the deadline. You don't get any of that. No, none of that due process with this kind of stuff. So, friends, this isn't justice. The Bible commands due process. And this doesn't look like due process to me. Who's next? The government is probably going to seize the guns of the people who have expired cards or missed a deadline. Something silly, right? They're going to seize those guns, and then you're going to be tied up in bureaucratic crap for several years before you can get your guns back. What's to stop them if they do that? If they go and they, without you going before a judge and arguing your case, if they can go confiscate your guns after you missed a deadline for your expired void, if they can go do that, what's stopping them from revoking your rights to speech? What's stopping them from revoking your church membership? Okay. And this isn't conspiracy. This is a pattern, and it's growing. And you need to get educated. Know your FOID status. Number one, always know your FOID status. Don't be a statistic. Don't wait until you're a statistic. Like the 300 people per year who have a revoked FOID card. Don't be in that statistic. Try to keep up with your FOID status, right? Demand local accountability. Ask your city council, hey, why are these cops doing the state's dirty work? Really? They did this $20,000 grant, which isn't all that much. It's like a drop in the bucket. Okay, for them to go out and police 300 people per year who have FOID revocations, and for them to go and conduct these gun seizures, and then I'd imagine you have to go before a judge in order to facilitate that gun seizure, which is how current state statute reads. I imagine they'd have to at least go do that, which is still not great for due process because you don't get to go before the judge prior to the judge saying, yes, you can go seize the guns. You need to ask your city council, hey, why are the cops doing the state's dirty work? Shouldn't the state police be in the business? They're the ones who are issuing the FOID and issuing the FOID revocations, by the way. They should probably be the ones who do the gun confiscation. I feel like that's how the statute reads, at least the way I interpret it. You need to push for reform. The Illinois FOID system, completely broken. Like I said, they give FOID cards out to people who should not have them. Robert Cremo, okay? He was deemed a clear and present danger by local police. They give it to him anyway. And then you've got Christopher Simmons here, who had his FOID card revoked, but nothing ever happened after that. His FOID card revoked, but Like, nobody checked to see if he still had guns in the house, or confiscate his guns. So it just goes to show you, like, the FOID system in general just sucks. There's no reason to really have it because it doesn't work. It's not about safety, it's about control. And we need to push for things like constitutional carry. We need to abolish the FOID system altogether. That is what should have happened, not this $20,000 grant to the local police to essentially be the anti-gun enforcement arm of Pritzker's regime, deputized as the the gun confiscators from the Illinois State Police. And we need to speak boldly, okay? We need to understand that silence is surrender. If we don't speak up now, they're going to keep going further and further with this stuff. Gun registries, you name it, right? Because make no mistake, $20,000 for gun seizures today becomes $200,000 for red flag raids tomorrow. Red flag law raids tomorrow. I mean, they're going to continue to push this radical gun grabbing stuff. And we just need to call for the abolish. Like, if the system is failing that badly, where we're issuing FOID cards to people who really shouldn't have them, we're not even following through with the FOID revocation process, the system doesn't work. Let's just get rid of it, right? All right, I got to take a quick break, but smash that like button, share this out with your friends, subscribe to the channel. That's why there's an expiration on your FOID. They want you to forget to renew, so you become a felon immediately and your gun ownership is gone. Yeah, that's exactly what the FOID is all about. They want you to become a part of those statistics where 300 people per year in one city, just think about that, in one city, have their FOIDs revoked. Now, of those 300 people, I'm sure some of them have their FOIDs revoked for good reason. Good reason, right? Just playing along with the left here with their FOID process, okay, where they are violent criminals. But at the end of the day, if you're a violent criminal and you have a FOID card and then it's revoked, you are not going to blink twice at your FOID revocation if you want to go commit a crime. Okay, Christopher Simmons, had he even had his guns confiscated, I don't know if that would have prohibited him or stopped him in any kind of way from carrying out a triple homicide suicide. I feel like somebody who gets it into their head that I want to kill 3 people and myself, they're going to figure out a way to do it, even if they don't have a gun. Okay, they'll either figure out a way to get the gun to do it, or they're going to do it in a different way. So really what needs to happen is we just need to lock up the dangerous people. I mean, it's really quite simple. I opened up the show like that. It's quite simple. We just need to lock up dangerous people. All right, I got to take a quick break, but we're going to come back. Nancy Pelosi, let's get to her. She was on with CNN Jake Tapper, and Jake Tapper had a line of questioning about congressional insider trading. And she got really flustered with Jake Tapper when he started to ask her questions about this. She was not expecting him to ask her questions about this. So we're going to get to that because I think it's absolutely hilarious. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Conservative Cat Clips. I'm Kat, and we're going to be talking about the myth of free college day. Free college, they cry, as if professors would grade 100 term papers for hugs. Okay, do you know any professor that would be willing to grade papers in exchange for hugs? I don't know any professors that would do that. And let me get one thing straight. There's no such thing as free college. Somebody pays for it. And spoiler alert, it's not the kid getting the woke gender studies degree. It's going to be you. It's going to be me via our taxes, your grandchildren's taxes. And they slap the word free on it. And they hope that you don't notice the bill until it's too late. So you know what happens when you make college free? You're going to flood the system with a bunch of people who aren't really ready for the working world. And then you're going to jack up tuition costs, because if it's getting paid by the taxpayer, why not jack up the tuition costs? And not to mention, you're devaluing the degree, okay? A bachelor's in gender liberation studies is not going to be worth much when you hand out these degrees like candy. Any kind of degree that you hand out, if you start handing them out like candy, uh, then they're not going to be worth very much. And what's worse are these bloated institutions spending a whole lot of time pushing Marxist ideology, and they're not actually teaching our students marketable skills. There's diversity coordinators at these bloated institutions who make six figures, and your kid isn't able to get the student isn't able to get an internship unless they sell their soul to the wokeism ideology and they sign a pledge about climate reparations, and they subscribe to this wokeism ideology. Here's a revolutionary idea, everyone. Not everyone needs to go to college. Trade schools, you can build homes, you can fix engines, you can wire up buildings, you can keep America humming. A welder can make up to $90K a year with no debt, a couple of trucks in the driveway, and he doesn't need a Marxist lecture on how his white privilege makes him inherently biased. Okay, free college and the free college crowd, they say that education is a right, but when government makes a right, they get to control it. So they'll say education is a right, and that's why it's got to be free. Reminder, spoiler alert, it's not free. They decide what gets taught, what speech is allowed, what ideas are allowed on campus, who's allowed on campus. That's not in education, that is indoctrination. So they say education is a right, and when government affords you rights, then they get to control it. Government is not in the business of giving you rights. We have unalienable rights, and those are laid out in the Constitution. Proverbs 22:7 says, the borrower is servant to the lender. Maybe we should stop chaining children, chaining our young youth to debt in the name of fake opportunity. There's fake opportunity, and let's start talking about hard work, grit, and real world skills. Okay, don't fall for the fantasy. Nothing in life is free except salvation. And even that came at a cost. Jesus paid it, not the federal government. Okay, so it's time to stop sending our kids into these ideological boot camps, and we have to start investing in real futures. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. Hey, good morning. Go ahead, smash that like button. Right now, go ahead, subscribe to the channel while you're here. And head on over to patriotpumpenergy.com. Patriotpumpenergy.com. This is the place where you can get your premium pre-workout. Fruit punch is my favorite flavor. You can use promo code ConservativeCat. That is the best promo code out there right now. $10 off. You can go get your bottle today. That really helps out the show. If you guys have always asked me, hey, how do we support the show? Go to patriotpumpenergy.com and just buy a bottle of pre-workout for a friend. If you don't use pre-workout or if you don't drink caffeine, there's a little bit of caffeine in it. It's 150 milligrams, but it's a supplement and it's got some really good stuff in there for things like focus. So go ahead, check it out, patriotpumpenergy.com. Now, let's get to Nancy Pelosi and Jake Tapper. Jake Tapper was interviewing Pelosi about President Donald Trump's comments essentially the remarks that President Donald Trump made was that former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi should be investigated. Trump said that she has the highest return of anybody practically in all of history of Wall Street. And she was not expecting to be asked questions by Jake Tapper. So she got really flustered here. Let's take a listen.
Yeah, it was. Let me just read what he said. I'm sorry that we had some sort of technical issue. Nancy Pelosi became rich.
Why do you have to read that? We're here to talk about the 60th anniversary of Medicaid. That's what I agreed to come to talk about.
Yeah, but I wanted
what that means in the election.
I wanted to give you a chance just to respond. He accused you of insider trading. What's your response to that?
That's ridiculous. In fact, I very much support the stop the trading of members of Congress. Not that I think anybody's doing anything wrong. If they are prosecuted and they go to jail. But because of the confidence it instills in the American people, don't worry about this. But I have no concern about the obvious investments that had been made over time. I'm not into it. My husband is, but it isn't.
I'm not into it. My husband is. I'm all for members of Congress trading. So Jake Tapper said there, at first she was like talking over him and everything and saying, I didn't want to come on to talk about that. I wanted to talk about the 60th anniversary of Medicaid or whatever. And he says, well, let me just read you what he said, Donald Trump. CNN continued to read Trump's words. Nancy Pelosi became rich. Then she interjected, and she didn't let Jake Tapper finish, really. She goes, why do you have to read that? I didn't come on to talk about that. Yeah. And Tapper agreed, but said he wanted to give her a chance to react to what Trump said, because he should be doing the work of journalism. This is actual journalism. I know it's rare. Archive this video, 7:25 a.m. Jake Tapper committed an act of journalism on CNN. So he gave her a chance to react, and she was accused of insider trading, right? And she goes, that's ridiculous. I very much am in support of trading for members of Congress being able to trade. Not that I think anybody is doing anything wrong, and if they are, they should be prosecuted and go to jail. That's what she says. But I have no concern about the obvious investment that have been made, investments that have been made over time. She goes, I'm not into it. My husband is into it, but it doesn't have anything to do with insider trading. Okay, so that's what she essentially denied any kind of insider trading, or that she did any kind of insider trading. So CNN, that interview followed President Donald Trump's comments at a signing at the White House earlier that day. Okay, I'm going to play his comments here because he was asked about the Pelosi Act. Now, I've talked about the Pelosi Act several times. You guys know that I love Senator Josh Hawley. I think he's very good. He's one of the only good U.S. senators, I think, that we've got. He's got this Pelosi Act, is what it's called, and it cleared committee 8-7, so it was pretty tight. But there were a lot of Democrats who joined Senator Josh Hawley, and I'll explain what the Pelosi Act does here in just a second. But let's play this. These are the remarks from President Donald Trump. Take a listen.
Nancy Pelosi became rich by having inside information. She made a fortune with her husband, and I think that's disgraceful. So in that sense, I'd like it, but I'd have to really see I study these things very carefully, and this just happened. So I'll take a look at it. But conceptually, I like it. And what I do think is Nancy Pelosi should be investigated, because she has the highest return of anybody practically in the history of Wall Street, save a few. How did that happen? It happened by she knows exactly what's going to happen, what's going to be announced. She buys stock, and then the stock goes up after the announcement's made. And she ought to be investigated. Nancy Pelosi.
Okay, so that was President Donald Trump. Senator Hawley, like I said, he introduced the very amazing Pelosi Act. I love that it's named the Pelosi Act. So it stands for Preventing Elected Leaders from Owning Securities and Investment Acts to prevent lawmakers and their spouses from trading. It comes after Pelosi and her husband magically managed to make hundreds of millions of dollars in stock trading. Okay, so the report here reads like this. Everyone who watches American politics, there's a report that they have that they use to introduce the Pelosi Act. So that that shows their work, that there are members of Congress who make hundreds of millions of dollars in stock trading. So here's the report, and here's how it reads. Everyone who watches American politics and who hasn't been living under a rock for the last few decades is aware of the mysterious process by which elected officials of the House of Representatives and the Senate grow monstrously rich on their very modest salaries. I'd say that they're modest. I mean, now the Illinois salaries, that's a totally different story. The state senators and the representatives, they're like some of the highest paid in the nation. But anyway, the report goes on. It is, and let's say this quietly, called graft. So what's graft? Graft is, in politics, it refers to the unethical and often illegal acquisition of power and money and other benefits through the abuse of one's position or power. Okay, so the report goes on. They say a lot of this comes from members of Congress being made aware of information that could affect various publicly traded corporations, information that's not available to the general public, and then they act on that information, and then they score. Okay, so the report noted that in every other place but Congress, this is called insider trading, and it's against the law if you have insider information. But Hawley hopes that this is going to be rectified with the passage of the Pelosi Act. So I am all about the Pelosi Act. People like AOC have joined forces with Senator Josh Hawley to get this kind of thing passed. So this would ban and prohibit lawmakers and their spouses from holding, purchasing, and selling stocks for the duration of that lawmaker's time in office. Okay, so this is a public service. Okay, you might get those people who say, well, that's not fair. They should be able to participate in the stock market because they're Americans too. Why would they suspend their freedoms? Yada, yada, yada. Look, folks, they're lawmakers. They're entering into public service. There should be a connotation with public service, and I've talked about this before, that you give up or that it's a sacrificial position. Okay, public service. Service is typically associated with volunteerism. Some sort of sacrifice should be made when you enter public service. Lawmakers would be allowed to invest, of course, in diversified mutual funds, exchanged traded funds, or U.S. Treasury bonds while in office. Okay, so I think that is pretty fair. Okay, this is just common sense legislation. I don't know why it hasn't been passed before. If passed, current lawmakers would have 180 days to comply with the legislation. Likewise, newly elected lawmakers must achieve compliance within 180 days of entering office. So this is pretty simple. Love Senator Josh Hawley for introducing this. I think he's one of the best U.S. senators we've got. Nancy Pelosi sweating, though, and getting very flustered with CNN. Hilarious. Another hilarious story that we're going to get to today. Eric Swalwell, Fang, he tried to challenge Greg Gutfeld, fell to a gym like bro off or whatever. Okay, so he issues this challenge to Greg for poking fun at these on his show, these very lame gym videos that he had posted. Okay, and Eric Swalwell, he already embarrassed himself with these lame gym videos. I'm sure you've seen them. He already embarrassed himself, but now he's further embarrassing himself by challenging Greg Gutfeld to a lifting match, essentially. We're going to get to that. Another funny story today. Sydney Sweeney, all the talk. We've talked about her several times on the show. The controversy is just ridiculous, but I think it's fascinating. They're pulling this from 2022, the mainstream media, this incident where she had thrown her mom like a 60th birthday party, and they called it a MAGA party. Okay, it wasn't a MAGA party. Okay, it was like a country themed birthday party that she threw for her mom, and she put pictures on Instagram, naturally. Okay, and some people were dressed in a thin blue line. There was one guy that was dressed in a thin blue line t-shirt looking thing, and then there was another picture where people were depicted with the red hats, and the red hats were like parody hats of the MAGA hat. It said "Make 60 Great Again." Hilarious, so funny. But apparently, at the time in 2022, they said that Sydney Sweeney was like this MAGA person, which she wasn't, right? And she came out and actually sort of apologized. Not really apologized, but addressed it in 2022. And now they're throwing this up and they're saying, yeah, Sydney Sweeney is MAGA. I don't think so. Okay, first of all. She just likes to make a ton of money and do advertisements for American Eagle and for that soap company. And she's just an actress, right? All right, we're going to get to that. Let's start with Eric Swalwell. Eric Swalwell. You guys are going to get a kick out of this because the lame videos that he had posted, and he was attacking President Donald Trump for being in recess, essentially, and he was attacking MAGA Republicans for being in recess. He posted these videos of him being in a swimming pool and lifting weights, saying he should be working on lowering costs for the American people. He claimed that this normal recess, this is not anything surprising. He claimed that this normal recess that the House of Representatives have taken from session. They're in recess right now. And he claimed that this normal recess that's going on is because of the Epstein files. It's a dumb argument, but then again, we have to remember who this is we're talking about. This is Eric Swalwell. Let's take a look at this video he had posted. Like, this is his own post. Nobody like ripped it. Nobody like generated it via AI. He posted this unironically. Let's take a look.
I should be working right now. I should be at the Capitol. I should be in a suit. Instead, Republicans sent us home because they would rather stand up for Donald Trump than release the Epstein files and stand up for victims. We could be at Washington, D.C., lowering your healthcare costs, lowering your grocery costs, and restoring your rights. I should be working right now. Instead, I'm pumping iron at the gym.
Okay, so that's Eric Swalwell. Ridiculous video. Very lame. Very, very lame. Now, the funny thing is he had a chance to lower costs for the American people, but he actually voted against the One Big Beautiful Bill. You know, the thing that preserved the tax cuts for the Americans, the 2017 tax cuts. Instead, he's doing things like this video. So he's not actually lowering the cost for the American people when it comes to, you know, healthcare. He is making videos like this and voting against legislation that actually helps Americans, like the Big Beautiful Bill. Swalwell, he was naturally mocked on X for this video. And Greg Gutfeld, he had a lot of fun with this on his show. You guys caught it. Gutfeld said that Swalwell, essentially his video gave him the ick. Like, it was like kind of gross. And he was mocking Swalwell on a show or whatever. So that mocking naturally made Swalwell upset. And then he just decided to take to X and embarrass himself even further. Let's take a look at this tweet. So here's what Swalwell says. He says, here's the deal for Gutfeld. Never heard of him till he spent 8 minutes criticizing what I bench press. The deal, if the tough guy benches more than me for 10 reps, I'll leave Congress. If not, he leaves as Fox News. I'll give Greg 48 hours to accept. I'm calling him Gutlessfeld. Then I'm calling him Gutlessfeld if he doesn't accept. Okay. So this is the beef between Eric Swalwell and Greg Gutfeld. Sorry. So he just further embarrassed himself with that tweet. Like, what the hell is wrong with you, man? Like, that's a member of Congress. Think about that. Eric Swalwell is a member of Congress. Now, Greg Gutfeld is a comedian. Naturally, he's going to go on his show and mock and poke fun at members of Congress because that is the nature of his show. So we can expect that from him. This guy being a member of Congress, it's a little odd to see him bench pressing, mocking President Donald Trump. At normal recess, they took a recess during session, which is pretty standard. He's taking jabs at Republicans and at Donald Trump. Really, what this guy is starting to sound like to me is a desperate 12-year-old who got bested in the schoolyard during a fight, and now he's throwing a tantrum in response. That's what this looks like to me. So now he claims he's never heard of Gutfeld, which is so ridiculous. Nobody actually believes that. Okay. He thinks that this was a like fun little shot, or he took a jab at Gutfeld. Really, it just makes him look silly. Nobody believes that Eric Swalwell hasn't heard of Greg Gutfeld. Greg Gutfeld is the top late night comedian on Fox News. He hosts a show called Gutfeld, and in the ratings, I mean, he regularly comes out on top. Just to give you some of these numbers, I mean, it'd be pretty much impossible for Eric Swalwell not to know who Greg Gutfeld is. So he's just straight up lying in that tweet, and he just looks even sillier than he already did. He embarrassed himself further by saying that. So he's got 2.9 million viewers, Greg Gutfeld, okay, on a given night. 327,000 viewers. in the 25 to 54 demographic. Okay, ages 25 to 54 among 18 to 49. He's got 207,000. Now let's compare to other late night shows that are very similar to Greg Gutfeld. So he's got 2.9 million viewers. Late night show, there's 2.2 million followers. Jimmy Kimmel Show, 1.1 million followers. The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, 1 million followers or viewers. Seth Meyers, Late Night with Seth Meyers, 700,000 viewers. The Daily Show, 500,000 viewers. So, like, he bests all of these late night shows, like Greg Gutfeld does. So, I don't know how you say, with somebody with 3 million viewers on a given night, I don't know how you say you don't know him. Okay. Meanwhile, the approval of congressional Democrats, by the way, sits at 19%. So, yeah, Greg Gutfeld is definitely more popular than you, Eric, just by sheer numbers standpoint. The Democrat Party is at record lows for favorability. People don't like the Democrat Party anymore. And this is not a battle that Swalwell wants to take on. The numbers are there. People really like Greg Gutfeld's show. He's the top late night show comedian on cable TV. Okay, so there's another senator out there who offered to take Swalwell up on his offer, which I thought was pretty funny. His name is Mark Wayne Mullen. Okay, so let me pull up this tweet. He made an offer for Eric Swalwell. So he says, Eric, if you're looking for a reason to leave Congress, I'll be your huckleberry. I'll take your offer, or whatever your max is. I'll do for a minimum of 5 reps. Okay, so he'll do a max, like whatever Eric Swalwell's max is on the bench. I'll do it for 5 reps. You're welcome to counter. Give my best to Fang Fang. That part was rich. I give my best to Fang Fang. So there's the tweet. Beautiful. So not only is Greg more successful at his job than Eric Swalwell by sheer numbers standpoint, okay, he's more successful at his job, but Swalwell isn't aware of Greg Gutfeld's history, his history with bodybuilding. So this is kind of interesting. This was on X. Here we go. This is Greg Gutfeld in his prime. Now, Greg Gutfeld is clearly much older than Eric Swalwell, but he has a bodybuilding history, and this is Greg Gutfeld back in his prime. So I have no doubt that Greg Gutfeld would probably cream Swalwell if they were the same age. Now, I don't know about now because Greg Gutfeld is much older than this fellow right here in this picture of the bodybuilding. But I mean, Swalwell may or may not want to take Greg Gutfeld up on that bet, because he might be able to beat him now if his body looked like that. Like, he was a bodybuilder, okay? So he might even be able to beat Eric Swalwell at the age he is now. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Throw it in the comment section. I thought that this was a pretty funny story. He's challenging Greg Gutfeld to a weightlifting competition. These are just so unserious people. Like, this Democrat Party is just unserious. Now, Greg Gutfeld's job is to be unserious. Okay, so naturally, him taking jabs and poking fun at Eric Swalwell on his comedy show makes sense. A member of Congress doing this on his X page when he claims to be holier than thou and like, I have a very important job to do. I need to be lowering the cost for the American people. You know, it's just so stupid. Like, you're a member of Congress, man, and you're playing these games on X. All right. Anyone who has a Chinese spy for a lover while he is married, I didn't know that part. Thanks for chiming in. Isn't someone to take advice from. Yeah, or isn't anybody you should take seriously. I had no idea he was actually married during that time. Fang Fang, the Chinese spy, right? He's probably not somebody you want to take advice from, Eric Swalwell. All right, I've got to take a quick break, but when we come back, I will hit on the Sydney Sweeney thing just because it's blown up on the internet. But this is kind of fascinating. You see the mainstream media digging up the 2022 MAGA party that Sydney Sweeney threw for her mom's 60th birthday party, which it wasn't even a MAGA party. I'll get to that here in just a second. Smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Hey, good morning. Go ahead and smash that like button, share this out with your friends, and be sure to subscribe. We are going to get to the Sydney Sweeney thing because people are just crazy. This is interesting, and I want to bring this up because this is how far they'll go, the mainstream media, when it comes to attacking anything that we like. Okay, so whether that's red meat, working out, gas-powered vehicles. Okay, the mainstream media will stop at nothing to take it away from us or to ruin it. Okay, because misery demands company. So Sydney Sweeney, she is no stranger to internet outrage. So this week, she's guilty of the crime of having too many right-leaning people say that she's hot and that she looks good in denim. Okay, so she is guilty of that. A lot of right-leaning people are saying, yes, Sydney Sweeney is objectively hot. Like, she's objectively beautiful. We talk about that here on this program, that there are objective standards to beauty. Now, the mainstream media, this Atlantic piece, they're digging up this 2022 incident where she posted some Instagram pictures of her mom's 60th birthday. They're digging this up and they're saying that she threw her mom a MAGA party. Spoiler, it wasn't a MAGA party. That would have been totally dope, though. I should probably throw my mom a MAGA party. She'd love that. I think she's turned 65. 65, my mom. She probably wouldn't appreciate me saying that, but the lefties on the internet are extremely emotional about Sydney Sweeney in denim rocking the jeans and the cool car, which really is just a Calvin Klein campaign. It's a remake, which remakes happen all of the time. Okay, it was a Brooke Shields. She kind of did something similar. This is an American Eagle ad. If you haven't seen it, I mean, Sydney Sweeney's just in jeans and she's by this really old time looking cool car. I don't know my cars very well, but it's not an ad for me. I've talked about this. Ads with sex appeal don't really work on me. I am one of those crazy people who research the product for things like health benefits. If I were to buy a pair of jeans, I'm not going to care if Sydney Sweeney looks good in them or a guy even looks good in them if it was marketed towards females. An attractive guy, right? Sex appeal doesn't really work on me as a consumer. I would be researching the jeans to see if they were 100% cotton or if they were made with harmful dyes or something like that. That's how I consume. I'm a very practical consumer. So the sex appeal doesn't really work on me. I'd imagine that the American Eagle commercial was designed for teenage girls to want to look beautiful for men. Okay, that's what I think that who the ad is targeted for. And it wasn't nasty. Okay, definitely not Miley Cyrus on a wrecking ball, naked and deep throating a hammer. That's not what this commercial looked like at all. It was very modest, much like her. We've talked about this commercial with the bath soap, which I found a little bit weird. I think they used a little bit of her bath water to make the soap. But she was in the bathtub and there were bubbles everywhere, and it was very retro, classic feminine beauty, subtle beauty that they're using for this sex appeal. And there's an actual sex appeal there. That's why the feminazis are all upset, because they're jealous really of Sydney Sweeney. So This is interesting. The Atlantic publishes this, and I'm just going to read a little bit from the Atlantic. I'm sorry, ahead of time. Did American Eagle know what it was doing when they made the Sweeney advertisement? The company hasn't addressed the controversy. They did, by the way. They let out a statement. This was published prior to that statement. American Eagle issued a statement, which was absolutely hilarious, and they didn't apologize. That was my fear, was that American Eagle would bend the knee to the left and apologize. I'm glad they didn't do that. They were kind of snarky in their statement. But the Atlantic goes on. They say the company hasn't addressed the controversy, but the ad, not unlike the famous and controversial Brooke Shields, that wasn't even controversial back then. Everybody, that was not a controversial ad. Brooke Shields, Calvin Klein campaign, it appears to be playing off of. This is a much older ad. Seems like it was perhaps meant to walk a line, to be just controversial enough to garner some attention. It's not controversial. It's a hot woman in jeans. This has been going on since the beginning of time, where we do sex appeal advertisement. Okay, casting Sweeney to begin with supports this theory. Her image has been co-opted by the right, accurately or not, in part because of where she's from, the Mountain West, and her hobbies, like fixing cars. She likes fixing cars, and I guess she's from the Mountain West. I don't know much about this girl at all, other than she's got a beautiful face, right? And she's an actress. Even her figure has become a cultural stand-in for the idea pushed by conservative commentators that America should be free to love boobs. Sweeney's cultural associations with conservatism has also been helped along by an Instagram post she made in 2022 featuring photos from a surprise hoedown party for her mom's 60th birthday. Online, people found separate photos depicting guests at this hat in MAGA-style hats and Blue Lives Matter gear, which led to backlash. So I'm going to be chatting about that. It's the 2022 Instagram post that she had. Like, oh my gosh, these people are ridiculous. So the Atlantic is saying, like, essentially, American Eagle knew what they were doing. They hired a MAGA woman. She is totally MAGA. She voted for Donald Trump because she's from the Mountain West. She likes fixing cars. Her figure is, she's got big boobs, and conservatives like big boobs, right? So, and she threw a MAGA birthday party for her mom's. Spoiler, it wasn't a MAGA birthday party, but a marketing exec with enough awareness of Sweeney's image and the political and cultural conversation around her might have figured that an ad featuring her talking about her good genes would draw eyeballs. So they essentially said they knew. Here's what American Eagle probably did. Hot woman, put her in jeans, put her next to a car. Why are we doing that? Because it's worked since the beginning of time. Hence the Brooke Shields Calvin Klein ad. Okay. And they were probably ripping off that a little bit. And sex appeal works, and sex in advertisement has been a thing since literally the beginning of time, like advertisement. Okay. Was born. So in 2022, this actress, Sydney Sweeney, she did throw her mom a 60th birthday party, and she posted Instagram photos of this because that's what we all do. We throw our mom birthday parties and we say, hey, check out my family, check out this party. Okay, that's what we do on Instagram. So a couple of photos caused the Twitter users and the Blue Sky type users to bang their fingers on the keyboard, and they were keyboard warriors, and they took to their keyboards and they were screaming about these couple of photos she had posted on her Instagram, where people were obviously wearing these parody hats. It doesn't mean that they're MAGA supporters, okay? They were parodying off the MAGA hat, and it says "Make 60 Great Again," and they kind of look like MAGA hats. They're red hats, and it says "Make 60 Great Again." So we know that leftists assault people for their choice of headwear. That's just what they do. They assault people who wear those types of hats out in public. Actually happened, not assault, like violent assault, but definitely people have screamed at me because I've worn that hat out in public before. I was on an airline, and the stewardess really was upset that I was wearing it, and she asked me to take it off, and I said no, and it kind of just ended there. But I mean, this is a very popular hat, the MAGA hat, and there's a parody of this hat everywhere. Even if you wear a parody of the hat, that's no bueno. You cannot wear a parody of this hat because we have such a hatred for this hat. So a couple of guests were featured on her Instagram at this party wearing that hat that said "Make 60 Great Again." Okay, there was another photo of a guy who was just wearing like a t-shirt, probably from the bottom of his drawer, and he didn't really think much of it, threw it on. It's like a thin blue line shirt. And like a lot of the times that thin blue line, really what it means, it's you fly the flag, you wear that, and it indicates like, oh, I'm remembering someone who lost their life in the line of duty. Like that's what the thin blue line is really all about. And leftists, of course, hate that. They can't stand that. They can't support cops at all. And they hate the thin blue line because they think it's a symbol of hate for some odd reason. So it was like an American flag. The guy's wearing a cowboy hat on our Instagram, okay, and he's wearing like a thin blue line flag, and it's like very subtle. It's not anything like crazy. Sweeney, at the time in 2022, she was shocked by the outrage and the attacks on social media that she received over these two photos of the guests. And she said, "You guys, this is wild. It was an innocent celebration for my mom's milestone 60th birthday. This has turned into an absurd political statement, which was not the intention. Please stop making assumptions. Much love to everybody. Happy birthday, Mom." That's what she said in August of 2022. But the left, of course, attacked her more anyway, even though she kind of came out with this, like, I wouldn't say it's an apology, but she's just like coming out and saying, like, guys, don't assume things about these people. Like, they might not have those political affiliations, these guests. This was like really just a picture of my mom's birthday party, and some of the guests happen to be wearing some things that like you don't agree with. Okay. The left attacked her more anyway, even after she made that post. The actress, of course, Cindy, she should have known better that these people who are so easily triggered over hats that happen to be red and shirts that happen to have a blue line on them, that like she should know better that these people can't have fun and that they are just miserable, and misery demands company. She should have known that making a post like this was going to make it worse for herself. So at the time, here's what some people on her account had said. Take a listen to this. "Then you should have selected other pictures to post that wouldn't be left up to interpretation in this manner." Oh my God. Goodness, gosh. Here's another one. "Girl, they were wearing MAGA hats and Blue Lives Matter t-shirts," which they actually weren't. The guy was wearing a thin blue line shirt. That is not a Blue Lives Matter t-shirt. Okay, that is remembering police, showing your support for police officers, typically police officers who die in the line of duty, which isn't really all that political. And then the MAGA hats were parody. They didn't even say "Make America Great" on them. They said "Make 60 Great." It was a parody hat. But she says, "Girl, they were wearing MAGA hats and Blue Lives Matter t-shirts. You cannot be serious." The haters also claimed that Sweeney was at fault for not intentionally or unintentionally policing, I guess, the shirts that people wore. And like, how is it Sydney's fault that some of the guests that showed up to, even if they were wearing like full-blown Trump garb, okay, it's not really up to Sydney Sweeney to demand what they wear and police what they wear when they go to a birthday party. Okay, according to a former Twitter user at the time, 2022, they said, "Maybe don't post photos of people with blue stripes and MAGA hats if you don't want people calling you out on it, or deal with it." Or worse, that Sydney Sweeney supports making 60 great again. Like, God forbid, what if Sydney Sweeney actually supports making 60 great again, right? Or is a Trump supporter or supports law enforcement herself? Like, you know what I mean? Like, God forbid she actually, supports those things, I guess. It's like, so what if she did? So what if the people that attended the party did? Sweeney, she never apologized for this American Eagle ad or anything like that I've seen. Good for her. even if as the media pestered her for a year, trying to get her to, she was pestered after this incident to apologize. She was pressured and pestered by the media to apologize for that incident in 2022, but she didn't do it then. I don't think she's going to do it now. Did she vote for Donald Trump? I don't know. Okay. I doubt it. I doubt she even voted, right? Because like she's probably, I don't know. Maybe she did, but at the end of the day, who cares? Right? She's just this. She's a hot girl who does commercials. Like, I mean, why are we making such a big deal out of this? Why is the left completely melting down and losing their minds over this? And speculating that Sydney Sweeney is like a MAGA Trump supporter. I don't think that she's like a full-blown MAGA Trump supporter. Okay. Yeah. Anyway. All right. I'm going to take a quick break. Actually, that's the end of the show. 8:01. I was a little late today, but we have more planned tomorrow, so you won't want to miss any of that. 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. It's a daily show, Central Time. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends about it. Share this out with your friends. We'll have more tomorrow. I'll probably get to Kathy Hochul. I didn't get to her today, but she got out there, and she had this like pathetic excuse for Zohran Memdani. He has traditionally always had some very vile comments about police officers. He has said things on his X account. Back in 2020, he said, queer liberation means defunding the police. Back in 2020, he said, we don't need investigation to know that NYPD is racist, anti-queer, and a major threat to public safety. We need to defend the New York Police Department. This guy is running for mayor. Okay. And, you know, Kathy Hochul was asked about this, where she was asked to, you know, react to the comments that he made during 2020 and what she thinks about that, you know, being that he could potentially be the New York mayor. And she essentially said, like, and it doesn't get any more like pathetic than that. She says, I mean, seriously, going after an unelected official, which she's wrong about that. I think he was an assemblyman at the time. She goes, going after an unelected official for something that he said back in 2020 when people were, I mean, come on, give me a break. This is what Kathy Hochul said. So we'll probably get to a little bit more of that maybe tomorrow. I'll start out with that. Just ran out of time today. So have a blessed day. Appreciate you. We'll be back at it. Bye-bye.